Welcome back to Stockwatch, and of course we are discussing Budget 2010, which was just announced on Friday. And joining me in the studio I have Andrew Lee and Suhaimi Illias of Maybank Investment Bank. Now let's talk about the impact or benefit of the budget on certain stocks and sectors in our economy. Of course, we saw telcos benefit quite significantly from a broadband subsidy. Maybe Andrew, if you can share with us how that's going to affect certain companies on the stock exchange.
Sure. Essentially, I think all the telcos will benefit to some degree. All the telcos have offerings in broadband, wired or wireless, but Telekom Malaysia at the moment still has the largest broadband subscriber base. They also have at the top end of the range the more expensive broadband packages. So they will, I think, tend to benefit more than the others. But the wireless players, the cellular companies are coming up with more offerings, more interesting offerings in wireless broadband. And so companies like Axiata, like Digi, even Green Packet, they will all benefit in terms of an acceleration of subscribers and a wider adoption of broadband, which is the main goal for the government. Mm-hmm. So I think they will all benefit in general terms. I don't think there's a specific larger beneficiary than others.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Are there any ICT related companies that might possibly benefit from it?
I suppose so, but I think when we talk about broadband, the primary beneficiaries would more be the cellular players than ICT players, mm-hmm. I believe. Yeah.
Okay, let's move on to property. Yeah? Now, of course, you did mention earlier the reintroduction of RPGT, or mm-hmm. Real Property Gains Tax. Now, which developers specifically will it affect, and will housing demand suffer? Maybe Suhaimi, you can kick that off.
I think to some extent there might be some effect to housing demand as a result of this unexpected reintroduction of RPGT of 5%. However, I think to some extent for the government, maybe the concern here, as what has been emerging across the region, is the risk of property market bubble. So I would see this move as a preemptive measures to keep speculative activities within our asset market, especially property, to be in check, to prevent any untoward situation with regards to the macroeconomic risk to the country going forward.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but I think we've got to keep it in perspective. 5% is not a great deal. I mean, presumably if you have gains anyway, 5% of a gain is not a huge amount compared to previously 25 up to 30% of the property gain. Mm-hmm. So I think while it might have some dampening effect in terms of sentiment, it's not going to be a huge dampener. And again, it's really going to be a dampener, have a dampening effect really on the high end for the speculative demand. So maybe companies like IGB or Bandaraya demand there might be affected very slightly. But I don't think it's a huge dampener on property demand overall.
Okay,
yeah.
Now we've got a question here from a regular viewer of ours, Victor Aoyong, and he wants to know, would properties owned by REIT companies be affected by RGPT?
No, I believe not. I believe the RGPT is specific to to individuals, individual purchasers and sellers. I think the RPGT transactions are still actually tax exempted.
Mm-hmm. You were mentioning earlier also that it won't actually have a great impact on the revenue earned by the government. Could you elaborate more on this?
Well, previously I believe the government earned something like $250 million or so on RGPT, and that was when it was on a sliding scale of up to 30%. Now it's only 5%. So the revenue earned is going to be scaled down substantially as a result of that.
Mm-hmm. So, Jaime, you have anything to add to that?
I think to some extent I agree with what Andrew said. Mm-hmm. By and large, I think this move is just to provide some token boosters to government revenues. Mm-hmm. I think the government also does not really want to kill off property sectors. That is why the level of the RPGT itself is only 5% as opposed to the previously it can go to as high as 30%. So the impact on revenue is not likely to be major.
Still manageable.
Yeah.
Okay, let's also
And
touch.
Sorry, and I would also say that I think there is a compensating effect on the property sector because there is there are incentives for workers to move to or to work in Iskandar, Malaysia. So obviously that is going to have, in the medium term, that's going to have a positive effect on property developers in Iskandar, Malaysia. So that would be companies like UEM Land, Tebrau Tengah, Land, that sort of thing. Even the companies that are that develop property, well, Malaysia-wide, companies like SP Setia, like Marsing, they also have activities in Iskandar, Malaysia, so they would benefit as well. So there is actually there is a compensating effect on the property market or the property sector from the incentives to move or incentives to work in Iskandar, Malaysia.
Okay, now let's just touch very quickly on consumer banking. Now there's an imposition of tax on credit cards. Is that going to affect your consumer banking customers?
I think yes. I think eventually what we'll see is certainly greater competition, perhaps a move for banks to try to absorb some of that tax increase. We don't know if the central bank will allow that. But I think what we will see is the number of credit cards in circulation come down overall. But I don't think that will affect the number of the value of the transactions. So the value of transactions per credit card will rise. So overall, we could see some margin compression on the credit card business. Yes, I think that is probably sensible.
Okay, now we'll touch on the auto sector and construction sector when we come back from this quick break. We're still taking questions from viewers. Stockwatch at tv3.com.my. Keep them coming. We'll be back right after this.